Thank you very much. Will it show up here and there? Really? All this high technology, it's very difficult. Well, that was about as much fun as I've had since the 2011 election, getting to go around. This is a huge thrill for me to be here, folks, and to be amongst a group of retirees, supposedly, and there's an awful lot of young people in this room, hard to believe you're retired, that really take on a cause that has no effect on your lives. That's what touches my heart, and that's what makes this all worthwhile. But you're thinking about your children, you're thinking about your grandchildren, and you're thinking about this great nation. And that's what this is about. How in the world could we have a nation that is so rich in resources that we could ever imagine people retiring without a respectful retirement income? And that's why I've been on this issue for so long. And we will make a very big move on this. Next week, we will be together as just the PT ministers in advance of our FTP, which will take place the 16th of December, when Mr. Flaherty joins us at the table. And we would most love to come out of next week's meeting with a press release that says that we have our 2/3 population in 2/3 of the provinces, and we're well on our way, and we're pretty excited about that taking place. Now, I'm just going to play around with this. Pointer is there, green is next. That's cool. All right, that's going to work. Just remind me every once in a while that maybe I should move those slides. Again, just thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. The platform that we need to keep this discussion going is what's so important. And having you all from every corner of this wonderful country will mean that we'll have an advocate in every one of these corners. And we have a couple of ministers that need a little whisper in the ear now and then, and I would nudge you just a tad to do that when you get back. There is no one that catches the eye and the ear of a politician more than a retiree, and for good reason, not for the fact that you vote, but the fact that you've lived many, many years and have many, many great thoughts and a lot of wisdom to share with us. So please, when you speak, everyone listens, so use that when you get home. I just wanted to start by thanking Susan for this opportunity and for actually bringing this to the stage. When we met, we had an instant like to a number of issues. I think we were only offside on one, and we had a wonderful conversation in beautiful Charlottetown that day, and I think that a great friendship was formed and a real team put together to start to take on this so important issue. So Susan, thank you very much personally. I know that Susan believes, as I do, that Canadians deserve a strong, reliable, affordable retirement system. And when I was preparing to join you here today, I did a little research. And I went to your website and I read Carp's financial security goals. The first line really resonated. No one wants to outlive their money. I couldn't agree more. A few lines down, I read, to ensure financial security as people age, there must be equitable access to pension and other retirement savings vehicles. And then I knew I was coming to the right place today. I've been finance minister in Prince Edward Island for just over 6 years now. It started back in 2007 when times were relatively good, and we had almost a full year of good roads. In 2008 hit, and we headed straight into that global economic downturn. We're just coming out of it now, albeit a little banged up and a little bruised, but we're heading toward a solid footing. And over these last 6 years, we've instituted new tax policy, tabled many budgets, handled many issues, but the topic I am most passionate about, and the one that keeps me up at night, remains ensuring that we have an adequate retirement income system. And there are challenges. You see, the economic recession exposed just how vulnerable retirement incomes are and illustrated very clearly that the successes we see today may not be guaranteed for future generations of workers. While markets have been slow to rebound, it has been challenging for most to make up lost ground. Individual savings are just not what they should be. On top of this, the career paths of younger workers are also more varied than they were in the past. Finding a decent paying, secure job with a good benefits package is getting more difficult. Often, term or contract work is more common now than it was when people of my age or older began their careers. As we are also aware, plan changes to the old age security and guaranteed income supplement will delay these benefits by 2 years. All of this is putting the burden of savings on the individual worker, who, by and large, will not save enough for retirement. Which is why I believe that we are facing a longer-term issue, where today's younger workers will struggle with finances later in life because they have inadequate savings. In my former life, I worked at a credit union. I dealt with people who fought to make ends meet during retirement, and I'll tell you, it is heartbreaking. It is encouraging to see that Canada has made significant strides in reducing poverty, and we can say that we have one of the lowest rates of senior poverty in the world. This success is attributed to the 3 pillars of Canada's retirement income system. They offered a balanced approach through, 1, our universal tax-funded benefits for seniors delivered through the Guaranteed Income Supplement and Old Age Security, mandatory savings through the Canada Pension Plan, and third, the various employment pension plans and individual retirement savings. These include the defined benefit plans and defined contribution and individual RRSPs. Like I said, all positive and encouraging, but there is a growing concern that the current successes in reducing poverty among seniors may be lost on the next generation of workers, because many people today won't have defined benefit plans. And in the future, these 3 pillars will rely much more heavily on private savings than they did in the past. And this is where the problem lies. People who are just starting to enter the workforce are facing higher student debt, limited job security, and are confronted with weaker retirement savings plans in the workplace, or none at all. Now, some say we need to do more to emphasize the importance of saving for the future, or that we need to develop more private sector savings options, or provide further tax incentives to save. These are all somewhat useful, but I believe, and the research confirms, that it is not enough. It won't solve the problem of people not saving enough for retirement. There are many reasons why this is true. We generally suffer from a type of short-sightedness where the financial needs and wants of today can outweigh the needs and wants to save for the future. Add to that the costs and risks associated with saving on your own through financial products in an RRSP. We do know Canadians pay some of the world's highest fees for financial services. These fees eat into investor returns. Now, don't get me wrong here. I think the voluntary savings system that we have provides a lot of flexibility for people to meet their savings needs. But I see the current system as becoming too dependent on individual savers who have a propensity to undersave, are overcharged, and invest in products that may not be right for them. Government is also providing significant incentives for retirement savings through the income tax system that may not be yielding the maximum results. In fact, just last month, it was reported that Canadian household debt-to-income ratio reached a new high of 164.3%, approximately 15 points higher than in the USA. So, given the private investments and taxpayer support, are we as a society happy with the outcomes? Do we have the balance among these 3 pillars to maintain our current success? Can we do better? I think we can. We have to do better. Back in 2010, finance ministers from around the country met in my home province of Prince Edward Island. We met to discuss retirement savings. We came from every political spectrum that you can imagine, but we agreed on something that day. Far too many Canadians are facing a future of inadequate retirement income because we as a society are not saving enough. It was agreed that the problem was real and needed a multi-pronged approach to address this emerging situation. Coming out of the meeting, we agreed to a few things, 3 of them in fact. First, to explore pension innovations that would allow financial institutions to offer broad-based defined contribution arrangements to multiple employers, all employees, and the self-employed. This is developed into the pooled retirement pension plans, or PRPPs. Second, work together on financial literacy initiatives that help people make more informed decisions when planning for their retirement. And finally, consider a modest, fully funded, phased-in approach to increase coverage and adequacy of Canada Pension Plan benefits. We are implementing recommendations to improve financial literacy, and a framework for PRPPs is well developed. We came back together time after time, as Susan said, to discuss our ideas to improve the CPP. And we have made progress in identifying that it is likely people with incomes between $30,000 and $100,000 who are most at risk of undersaving for retirement. But we haven't gotten as far as we should have. I personally think there has been far too much focus on the pooled registered pension plans. Yes, I think PRPPs are a retirement savings option, just like any of the current group RRSPs are a retirement savings option, but nothing more. Now, I've heard from some business organizations advocating for the PRPPs. They've lobbied me for it, but I've made my feelings very well known. I believe that PRPPs in isolation will be ineffective in dealing with the issue of securing savings for retirement. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I don't see how adding yet another water bucket will be much help. And I've said it publicly before, and I'll say it here now. The PRPP program is a voluntary program. Employers don't have to offer them. Employees don't have to use them. And that's the problem, isn't it? I think there's a place for these plans, but let me be perfectly clear. Putting another such voluntary plan in place will not be as effective as strengthening the Canada Pension Plan. My government's support for PRPs was, and is, and continues to be, conditional on the provinces and federal government taking concrete steps to strengthen the Canada Pension Plan. The problem is bigger than PRPPs, and strengthening the CPP is the most reasonable, cost-effective, secure, and portable way to address the issue. In the CPP, we have a secure program that we can build upon that represents everything a country like Canada stands for, and it's effective because it is mandatory. Last week, there was an editorial in the Globe and Mail that I think perfectly sums up the way I feel about CPP. The author wrote, and I quote, "If policymakers starting from scratch in 2013 wanted to design a best-in-class national pension plan, they'd end up building the Canada Pension Plan. It has just one defect. It's not ambitious enough. It's just too small. It's like the world's finest twin-size duvet trying to cover a king-size bed," unquote. I think that analogy is perfect. There is no disputing the model itself is fulfilling its role. It just needs some extra padding and a few more inches to cover the edges. Now, this is an issue that I've spent a considerable amount of time thinking about, looking into which options are better than others to achieve that. Ultimately, what we are aiming for is a modest, phased-in enhancement to the CPP. The existing CPP provides an inflation-protected defined benefit that replaces 25% of earnings, up to approximately $50,000. Premiums are 9.9% of earnings, or a maximum of about $4,600, shared equally by the employee and the employer. Currently, the maximum annual CPP benefit is about $1,000 a month, or $12,000 a year. Average payment is about half this, or $500 per month. Modest. What is modest, you ask? Like beauty, it is defined in the eye of the beholder. And my views have evolved on this. In any case, you have to start early for your savings to take effect, which is why the impact of expanding the CPP will provide the largest benefit to workers just entering the workforce. A simple model of expanding the CPP would be to raise the replacement rate from the current 25% to a higher amount, and to increase the threshold of pensionable earnings. Some have suggested a doubling of this. With an increase in benefits is an increase in premiums. And I believe this may not be the best option for low-wage earners, who have less flexibility to absorb an increase in premiums, and generally see income replacement rates that are approaching, and in some cases exceeding, 100% of pre-retirement income. when GIS, OAS, other savings and benefits are considered. To address this issue, I would propose exempting the low-wage group by having the expanded CPP start to take effect on earnings exceeding a threshold of $25,000. The proposed increase would raise the replacement rate by 15% for middle-income earners. And the additional 15% of replacement should also apply to a new range of pensionable earnings that is double the current maximum level, or just over $100,000. The increase in contribution to finance this benefit is estimated at about 3 percentage points of earnings. As, under the existing plan, premiums are shared equally between the employer and employee, 1.55% paid by employer and 1.55% paid by employee. This new premium would be payable on earnings between $25,000 and $100,000. Now, this is pretty complicated stuff. So let's go through it again on a graph. Are you picking me up on this microphone so we're okay? I'm just going to walk you through a few of these graphs, so if you're like me, the numbers just kind of rolled through your head and you glazed over. My little pointer working? Okay, I'll just point. Try this one. Told you technology never works. Okay, so we're going to walk through this. This is what our current benefit looks like today. So we follow this blue line. Just make sure I keep this. The blue line today, the big cube, is what we have under our current CPP. So this benefit kicks in at about $3,500 per year in salary. So there's a little notch out on this far left, as you can see. It goes up to 25% on the replacement axis, as you can see the replacement on this side. It goes across to the $51,000 threshold and stops. And that's the end of when we contribute and where we get any benefit from. So what I'm suggesting is, as you can see here in the arrow, we're going to take the block up in the current benefits, up to 40% replacement rate, and we're going to push this out toward $100,000 and bring it up to about a 15% replacement rate on that tranche. Okay, this is what it would look like in red. These would be the changes. And as you can see, we're going to bring it across here to that $25,000 mark. We're going to leave them with their current premiums and their current benefits. As I said, they are very delicately in a place where they're earning close to 100% of what they earn during their non-retirement days in their working lives. And sadly, that they have learned and have the ability to live at that. Because of the safety nets that we have in place, they will have the same amount of money. So what I'm suggesting is that after $25,000 and to the current threshold of $51,000, we'd push that block up by 3.1%, taking it up to a replacement of 40% of your retirement, of your pre-retirement income. And you can see that that takes it up from the 9.9 to 13%, shared equally by the employer and the employee, 1.55% of earnings for both. As well, the red line would push out to a new threshold of $101,000, and again, that threshold would be under the same assumption of a 3.1% increase, 1.55 for employers, 1.55% for employees. Again, the little circle that I've put in place on this shows the low earner exemption. They will not be impacted, and therefore it also will exempt a number of small and medium-sized businesses that are in the retail and service industry that would find it very difficult to play in this new scheme. So it does two very important pieces. It protects that lower income bracket from an increase on their part, and as well the business community that exists a lot in this world. It's a tough piece of business, but it is a reality. This shows what the current expansion option looks, what our current benefit looks like today. As you can see, from about that $3,500 level, It pushes out on a trajectory, it takes you up to about $11,500, levels off, and goes forever at that same benefit. That kicks in at that highest rate at about the $50,000 mark, as you can see there, and no further premiums, and therefore no further benefits are included. This next screen will show the trajectory that I'm suggesting, and that is at about the $25,000 level. It separates itself from the current levels that we pay and receive benefits upon. And it will go up, as you see, to that $51,000 level where it was before. Trajectory will slow a bit and take you to what is the new level, the highest level on maximal pensionable earnings at almost $24,000, effectively doubling the benefit for those that pay in through their 40 years of work at that higher level. And that's what that final would look like. I hope that makes it a little more clear than just babbling on about the numbers. We'll go through it a little bit more. We'll take some questions at the end, Susan, just if there's any clarification needed. As I said, for someone earning less than $25,000, the threshold, there would be no impact on premiums or benefits. So under this model that we have now shown you on the screen, assuming a 40-year career, for someone earning $40,000, their premiums would increase by a total of $465 a year, shared equally by employer and employee. So $232 for an employee, less than $1 a day. This would result in an estimated increase in CPP income of $2,250 per year. For someone earning $75,000, the increase in premiums would be $1,550, shared equally again, and would see a $7,500 increase in pension benefits annually. As you see in this chart, that $75,000 is there. Usually I have Nigel Burns doing this for me. Nigel would never let me down and not have these screens flipping at the right time. As you see in this chart, it continues across the spectrum to a maximum increase of $11,250, as we saw with the blue line going across in pension benefits, nearly doubling the maximum benefit under that existing plan with the red line that we saw just a moment ago. Any changes would need to be phased in to allow employers and employees to plan how the increased premiums would be built into compensation arrangements. The changes to this plan would be introduced over time when concerns about the strength of the economy have abated. Phasing in these measures after 2 years' notice, January 2016, and 3 years of premium increases, half a percentage point per year, should provide a sufficient adjustment period. The increased premiums will fully fund new benefits. I truly believe that CPP premiums should be viewed no differently than retirement savings from other means, be it from an employer-based RPP scheme, voluntary group RRSP, PRPPs, or other savings. CPP premiums represent savings for the employee who can directly benefit in proportion to the contributions made. They are not a payroll tax. These changes are, in my view, affordable, and perhaps more importantly, they will be more effective in strengthening retirement incomes. These are the broad strokes of the plan that I've shared with my federal and provincial colleagues. I've had some positive reaction, and others want to learn more. I won't mislead you, though. There are some who don't think this is the time to make these enhancements. I disagree, and so do many Canadians. The attention to the proposal and this issue continues to grow. There are articles and editorials in national newspapers just about every week now. My colleagues are reading these and hearing from people like yourselves who realize just how important the CPP is to ensuring Canadians have a viable retirement income. I'm sure my counterparts across the country are doing some research on this proposal, and it will be a topic of discussion when we meet later this fall. We need to get this important conversation moving forward. For that reason, I will continue to sound the bell loud and clear. Standing by and allowing our CPP to falter is simply not an option. I'd like to share with you an old Chinese proverb that I believe also holds true for strengthening the CPP. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. When I meet next with my fellow finance ministers, I will tell them it's time to start planting some trees. And as I close, I want to again thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I ask you to please spread the word. It is up to us to ensure that future generations have access to this vital retirement system. Thank you very much. Oh, absolutely. Love to.
You're preaching to the choir here, of course, and you certainly don't need to convince any of the people here there's a need for this change. What we can do, however, is help you get that change done. So a lot of our members will want to hear from you how they can help you and how we can help ourselves to make sure that this CPP enhancement happens now, not later.
Absolutely.
And we have one question from our chapters. Ramona Captain has a question.
Some groups are saying that enhancement is going to be a job killer. How do we answer them very succinctly?
Very succinctly, does that mean that I carried on too long when I was talking?
Not
says
at all,
the same
but
thing
I'm
when we're
saying
around the
us.
cabinet table. He says, Wes, succinctly summarize, please. I'll tell you what, Ramona, very, very quickly. We just have to look back to 1995, 1996, and 1997 when our pension plan, our CPP, was going by the wayside. And Paul Martin stepped up and with a number of his colleagues said, we're not letting this happen. We are not going to lose the best saving vehicle that we have ever had, and we are going to step up today. Is the economy bad? Yes, it is. Was it worse than it is today? Probably. And at a very, very momentous time in history, we did not see a single job lost. In matter of fact, we saw 2% growth in jobs over the next 2 years. And so I feel, and I've said this to many, many business groups and probably 55 individuals that own companies themselves, are you not planning to give your employee a 1.55% increase over the next 5 years? 2 years of notice, 3 years of phase-in. It is an employment benefit package, and it's an enhancement to that. Thank you, Ramona.
Thank you very much.
I want to mention that Ramona is from White Rock.
I know. I'm never going to forget Ramona for White Rock.
Okay.
My brother and sister-in-law's place.
Ah.
I'm going to take that back. I'm going to get her last name, and we'll check into that history.
Now, we're not going to recognize this next person without her fish suit. Anna Marie Howe from Winnipeg.
You really dressed up as a golden carp?
I did.
And then took the flag to the top?
Indeed.
That's pretty cool. How did you do that, with your fins, or?
Well, I didn't actually
you didn't
physically go to the top of the flagpole.
The flag went to the top of the flag.
Thank you for drawing attention to many of these matters, and I'm sure it really worked by being dressed up as a golden carp.
Being a carp outside City Hall for 3 hours on a beautiful sunny morning was a very fine experience for me.
A tad sweaty, I'm sure, but fine.
It was actually only about 4 degrees out, so I was just right.
Winnipeg. We're talking
Winnipeg. Sorry.
That's okay. My question is, the Canada Pension Plan Fund is well managed and a very strong fund, although it is already one of the biggest plans in the world. How do we approach people when they are saying, well, it's already too big? Why are you doing any modifications? What do we say to those people?
Very easy answer. This is also the very best managed plan anywhere in the globe. And our investment board, led by Mark Wiseman, is incredibly well done. And I have to tell you, and this is across all stripes, there have been so many enhancements made over the years to how we do investments and how we really sort out, reach out across the globe. We are looking at ways to do it better continually. That means that we're even looking right now that we would have people from other parts of the world sitting on the board to advise us on where great investment opportunities would exist. Just putting the right amount of risk in place, but allowing us to reach out. So having billions of more dollars to continue to do this effort in the fashion that Mark Wiseman sees as being very feasible, I have no issue in having this grow any bigger and lots bigger. It will only make it stronger.
Thank you.
Thank you. You know, a question on the previous, your answer to the previous question. You know that the Canadian Federation of Independent Business is fond of calling any increase in CPP premiums as a job killer. And you did mention that you spoke with them and that they were good with your exemption of the lower income group. So how come they haven't come out publicly and supported your plan?
Anybody here with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business?
This is open to the media.
And I'll just say this. I love what they do. And I've been part of them in the past. I've only been in government for 6.5 years and was in the private sector all my life. And an entrepreneur and right through all of my young life. I'm still young, that's right. That's my point. CFIB plays an incredibly important role across Canada and who they advocate for and what they do. But the Canadian Federation of Independent Business bases all of their comments on polling and asking their members what it is. And almost always, they come out at the 50% level. And so very happily, they walk down the middle of the road. And so when something comes out like this, it's easy just to say, oh, that's very interesting, Wes. And nod. And then they say, job killer. But again, you brought up such a huge point, and I just want to talk to that just for a second. I love CIBC too, yeah, CIBC and CFIB. Dan Kelly came down, the president of CFIB, and met with myself along with his regional representative that always likes to bash Prince Edward Island for our taxation policies. But that's just a small point. It doesn't bother me, as you can see. And we had an incredible, good meeting with Dan Kelly. And Dan was quite enthused by this notch out. He thought it worked very nicely in their world. He hasn't said that publicly, and it leads to the other point that I just wanted to touch on, succinctly summarizing. Sorry, Ramona, and I'll remember that forever. It is so important that we let everyone know that this is not a payroll tax. This is an employment benefit. There is a monstrous difference between a payroll tax and an employment benefit. This is like getting a raise. This is like having an in-place retirement pension plan in your business. That's what this is. It is a way to retain and recruit employees. It is an important part of enterprise. Right. We have to remember that, and if you say one thing to anyone out there, and any of these ministers, or anyone that has anything to do with the government that you are part of, say that. It is not a payroll tax.
Well, you know, part of our work at Carp is to expose some of these fictions, and also, if someone's going to say something privately, we encourage them to say it publicly as well, and so we'll find a way to put that into the public airwaves. I'd like to call on Ron Ferrell now from North Bay, Ontario. You had a question?
Great handshake, by the way, Ron.
I'm going to ask a question, but before I do that, Minister, I'd like to say that I'm really envious of the taxpayers of PEI, who have a government in the cornerstone of Confederation who shows such restraint to give you all those jobs and make you Minister of everything.
Thank you very much for that, Ron. I'm sure they're very appreciative.
My question has to do with the support that obviously you have here and you have from a number of your colleagues about the reform of the CPP and the changes that you're proposing. And I think we're probably building a consensus to have the necessary proportion of the population and so on. But can you tell us how you can and will convince the federal government to go along?
Well, the best part about that is that it puts the federal government in a very, very awkward position. We as finance ministers of the provinces are the actual trustees, along with Mr. Flaherty, but he is only one voice, just as I am at the table. So when we do, because we will, bring this together in 2/3 of the population and 2/3 of the province, Mr. Flaherty will have no choice but to bring it home. And that's what we're going to aim to do as early as next Friday, is to put it out in a press release and say, we now have that number of provinces, that number of the population, 2/3, that will expect to be voted upon at our December meeting of the FTP, which is our federal provincial territorial tables.
Minister, not at all to steal your thunder, but last December we did the calculation on the back of a napkin, and we found that of the people who had pronounced support for CPP enhancement, there was already enough people, and now you're going to confirm that there was enough of the provinces with enough of the population to make the changes. And that was when Minister Flaherty raced out to tell the cameras that he needed unanimous support. So how are we going to change that?
He doesn't, and he won't. There were other things on the table at that point, and among them were a couple of very contentious issues. It was easy to sweep this one under the rug at that point. So what is going to be so important for us this time is that it is the #1 issue, and we are going to go out in front of it, and we are going to say, we have now principles and objectives in place that we want to reach. We have defined modest, which is what I hope to do, and for the first time we've put numbers in place. And when we have a number in place and we have the numbers associated with that majority, he'll have no other choice but to say, we are going along with your plan.
Okay. I only reflect the skepticism of our members, and I'm going to call on Randy Felinsky to explain why.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, isn't that neat?
I've been streaming this live, and I've got a question from Jim Flaherty here, just back in my
How
territory.
How is
he? He and Christine are fine, but Jim's question is, just listening to the group and you, are you aware of any place where he can buy a king-size duvet?
Absolutely.
Cover this up?
And I'll even come and tuck him in. Tell him that too.
Absolutely.
Is that all right too, Jim?
Here, he's there.
Nope.
The question which the group, and you've talked about your priority, and you've talked about gathering up provincial strength for 2/3 more, majority, et cetera. And I mean, I'm leaving here believing it, and there's 50, 60 chapters here. So I know you're taking steps to make it a priority to get to the Flaherty meeting. What can we do locally? I know that Susan's got the national covered, but we have access to our local communities. So what would you like us to do between now and December meeting that really gets to our community to let them know more about the proposal, and particularly the literacy piece of it? I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely.
I think generally speaking, our community, we talked about this table, don't have enough literacy about CPP.
No question.
So they're not sure if they should support you. Listen to, what can we do as a chapter to help you?
Personally, you can take Jim and Christine to supper and talk to them about literacy.
You mean their literacy?
No,
Or-
Jim Flaherty, and I would never say anything behind anyone's back that I wouldn't say to their face, and I've said this to Jim, and he is an incredibly wonderful gentleman, and he has a social heart that we are very fortunate as Canadians to have him sitting at that table. And I thank him every time we're together for what he does at that federal level. And I know that Mr. Flaherty has a want for this. I'm just going to leave it at that. Now, what can everybody else do? Every single one of you here can reach out in your corner of this great country and just send a little email, a little phone call, and just talk about how important CPP has been to us since 1964, when that big fight took place originally, then the bigger fight that took place in 1996, and now it's time for another fight. And we have to make sure that all of us that truly understand what this is all about, and that it's not an electoral cycle thing, it's thinking way beyond it, but it's thinking about our children, our children's children, to ensure that they will have the same Canada that we've been able to enjoy, that you've all worked so hard to create, and there is no way we're going to let that falter. And that's all you have to say. Just say that we've got a plan, we see that there's modest incremental changes that will be fully funded, phased in over time, and that it will not be a job killer, and it is not a payroll tax. And if you could say that, that would be fantastic.
Well, apropos that, we have 56 chapters across the country. We have 52 of them represented here. Over 40 of our chapters raised the flag on October 1st. Now you think, well, a flag. Well, a flag at the same time across the country, right? And these are people who are prepared to do what is asked to make our issues known. There is a chapter in every capital city across the country. Of course, that's where the ministers of finance would reside and do their work. They would be prepared to meet with your colleagues across the country. So please extend this invitation for us when you meet with them next week, that if they would like to meet our local Carp chapter, then we would be happy to arrange it. And if you want to give us their, operations person, I'd be happy to pass that along and get that done.
Well, thank you very much, and I will take that to them all next week at the table. I just spent 2 hours before I got here sitting with Minister Sousa of Ontario. And first time that we've had an opportunity to sit and talk as two individuals, and his passion and his want for this is as great as mine, and I couldn't ask for anything more. So the very largest of our provinces and the very smallest of our provinces will collect everybody in between, and we'll ensure that we deliver it on December the 16th and 17th.
Well, we'll be watching. Ross Mayat, our general manager and formerly the head of building the community network of bringing us up to 56 chapters. This is the man you need to talk to.
Thanks very much for taking the time again today.
My thrill.
My question is, our finance minister here in Ontario seems to be, I'm going to go it alone with an Ontario model. Does that become an impediment or a hindrance to the idea of trying to get a consensus across the country, or can he be rolled into your model?
It's a great question. I thank you very much for bringing it up. That's only a second choice. That's if we fail. He is not going to allow the Ontarians to ever suffer under a faltering CPP, so he will implement something provincially if we fail. We're not going to fail. And we talked about that at great length today, and that's just his second choice. We're going full blast at this, and we will be going at all our colleagues to ensure that we get number one choice in place, and he's on side 100% for that.
Okay, another question now from North Fraser, BC. Bruce Bird, there you are.
BC folks have a lot of questions.
We have a lot of folks.
Well, you come that far, you should be able to ask all the questions you want.
We're very active in terms of number of chapters. I don't think any province has grown faster because we used to have one chapter for a long time.
Do you know why that
Now
is?
we have 9.
Because all the wonderful scenery that you have out there, second only to Prince Edward Island, no wonder there's so many seniors that congregate there.
I'd agree with you there. I was in Charlottetown in August, and it's a very nice place.
Thank you.
Very friendly people, too.
Great. Except for me. Cold-hearted banker is what they call it. Okay, enough of that silly.
So, current members support the idea that our younger generations should have a comfortable retirement. But is there any, and you alluded in your introductions that it would not impact us in any way, the people in this room. Is there any way the changes could be made to help older Canadians?
Well, let me put it this way. Will the plan enhancements affect me and everyone else in this room? Very, very slightly in the way that we're talking about in actual payment in your pocket. But we'll make it a stronger country and leave a wonderful legacy for you all when we leave. Absolutely. There is going to be a huge amount of pressure on provinces right across this nation when we have inadequate retirement incomes for the next generation. It's going to be a huge hit on our healthcare system. It's going to be a huge hit on our social services. We just will not be able to afford that. So if you want to have a strong and viable country and be so proud that you helped create that, that's how you'll be paid off, I'd have to say. Is that fair?
And last but not least, oh, you want a question?
session on how to improve our communications with politicians and the media. As the finance minister, what tips and tricks could you tell our local chapter chairs on how to get the attention of their local MLAs and MPPs, but not just on this issue, on many other issues?
First, you find the spouse's name of the MLA. Really works great, because if you've got Sandra's attention, then you've got my attention. We've been married for 31 years, and she's been my girlfriend since we were in grade 12. And when she talks, I listen, and she's my best critic. And seriously, if you want to do something like that, reach out and touch our very wonderful spouses. Get her home.
Touch in a literal way, just.
Great to have levity in the room. No, seriously, let's talk about that for a minute. And I know it's different in Prince Edward Island because we're a small jurisdiction. I can't walk down the street. I can't go grocery shopping. I can't go into the bank. I can't do anything without 3 people telling me how I could do my job better. And that's really helpful. And I know that it's different in larger jurisdictions. And seriously, that's what we have to attempt to do, is to bring small town politics to big jurisdictions. And it's so important. We're still doing the same job. Charles Sousa does the same thing that I do, only on a scale that has a whole lot more zeros. And the job that he does as an MLA makes, MPP, thank you very much.
MLA.
Stand corrected really
just
quickly.
In Ontario.
Very important fact is that he still represents you as constituents. And that always has to ring home. And we're there, and hopefully we're all there for the same reason, and that is to make this a better place. And they need to be reminded of that. And we're all just human. We're all here to take corrections. We love that. And that's how we make it better. And so seriously, for me, I have done this for 6.5 years. I love every minute of every day. It is the greatest privilege that a person could ever have. And they have to be reminded of that, because it's sometimes every day's not so rosy. And you have to be able to make sure that you remind them when you say this. And you reach out. I make phone calls all the way in on my drive to work, about an hour, and all the way home. And anyone that has anything not so nice to say in an email, I always call those people. And I try to do it on my way in, because it's between 7 and 8, and it's perfect. 5 to 7, and I love to call them. You sent me an email yesterday. Would you like to clarify that point? You were up, weren't you? Sorry. I didn't wake you, did I? But that is so important. I never miss an email. I see them all, and I know that in a smaller jurisdiction it might be possible. I'll tell you, we get reached out to as often as any MPP would in Ontario. It is our job, and that's what we're there for. And remind them and tell them how important that is. And my home phone number is listed. Half Prince Edward Island knows my cell number, and we are there to serve the people. And just whenever they maybe say things a little bit raw, you just remind them of what their jobs are.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, thanks for asking that question. A little bit of tradecraft here. When we try to contact various and different offices, you'd think, well, with a Carp, they ought to answer, but they don't.
Really?
And so my advice to everybody is go to the softest spot. And as the minister just said, the constituency office is where they must go, and they must see you there. Now, once you get one minister, for example, Minister Sheridan, who answers his emails, you ask him, please, would you contact your colleague, your equal, the person you're about to meet, for this or that. As we did with asking him to chat with Charles Sousa and give us his support, and I know that he did that, and that's great. Better if he had shown up. But there you are, but I didn't, that is not to shame. It's really the way you get through, and he's not kidding, Randy. If you have access to Minister Flaherty directly, right, and use those avenues. Because the front door is not always the easiest one to get through, so thank you for that.
Very fair. That's a great idea in the constituency office.
Last but not least, Bill Van Gorder, who runs Halifax, Nova Scotia.
How many times was he in the news last night or last year on his own?
We lost count. We don't have enough bandwidth to capture everything.
Be running for office down there, just to overthrow your government.
Trying to. I do want you to know that the Nova Scotia chapter is in full support of what you're doing, and we'll do our best to make sure that our new finance minister is as supportive as the old finance minister was.
Excellent.
However, and not to end on a negative note, but if in some way this project fails at the federal minister's level, would you be willing to push for an Atlantic public pension plan similar to what Ontario is talking about?
Failure's not an option.
Well done.
I seriously, Bill, I truly believe that we will get it this time. We have had an awful lot of conversations behind the scenes. One of the big things as to why I put this full proposal forward, that too much of it has taken place behind closed doors. And Canadians should have a full say in this, and we need to have this kind of conversation. There's too many things that are decided behind closed doors, and this is the type of thing, show it, get the literacy out so people can actually grasp what it is that's taking place. We all have incredibly busy lives, and that generation that I'm talking about have 2 small children, they're washing diapers because they can't afford plastic ones, and they're trying to feed their children and have 2 part-time jobs. And are they listening to this? It's tough. And so it takes this generation, knuckleheads like myself, to lead this, to say, you know what, this is the right thing to do. And we just can't fail. I mean, would I look at an Atlantic version? You know, we got to go bigger. We got to be smarter. We got to be builders. We've got to be like Paul Martin. You've got to think about the next generation. This isn't all about winning elections. And that's the part I'm going to run home next month.
You have to finish. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you
I don't
very
need
much.
to tell you that you have the full-throated support of all those assembled and their chapters when they get back to their respective
Fantastic.
cities. And they will look forward to hearing from you about the welcome that your colleagues will have for them and the respective provinces and offices. Don't forget, there is an importance that they need that kind of political support. You know, there's a lot of pushback, and they are hearing from very loud, well-financed voices. We're not as well-financed, but we're good and loud. So thank you again, and a small token of
Fantastic.
appreciation.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. There was one other little point, if I could, just take one more second of your time, because I know all of you are very technologically advanced, more advanced than me trying to run these little things. There's always, great. There is always our social network that is out there now, and that's Facebook and Twitter. And I think that Susan could send this along. Just take a couple of graphs, put it up on your Facebook page, and say, are you listening? And send it directly to your MLA, your MPP, Mr. Flaherty, anyone that you'd like, and make sure they're watching this like hawks. Trust me, Mr. Flaherty is very good at this and has people that are watching. And if he sees it on 20 or 30 or 40 Facebook pages of Carp members, I think it might go a long way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's the importance of us being associated with Zoomer Media, because the key is not only having the public person hear what we have to say, it's him or her being seen to be hearing our message, and that's part of our work here. Absolutely. Thank you again, Minister.